Special parallelograms: rectangle, rhombus, square. Properties of parallelograms. Has 4 sides, 2 pairs that parallel. May be equilateral. May be equiangular. May be equiangular and equilateral. Rectangle. A rectangle is a parallelogram with 4 right angles. All the rules of a parallelogram: 4 right angles. Remember that a right angle measures 90 degrees. Diagonals which are congruent, they have the same length. A rhombus is a parallelogram with 4 congruent or equal sides. A rhombus has the following rules. Rhombus. All the rules of a parallelogram: 4 sides that have the same length. Diagonals that intersect at right angles. Diagonals that bisect opposite pairs of angles.
Square. A square is a parallelogram with 4 right angles and 4 sides that have the same length. A square has all the rules of a rectangle and a rhombus as shown in square ABCD below. Principles involving properties of the special parallelograms. Principle 1. A rectangle, rhombus or square has all the properties of a parallelogram. Principle 2. Each angle of a rectangle is a right angle. Principle 3. The diagonals of a rectangle are congruent. Principle 4. All sides of a rhombus are congruent. Principle 5. The diagonals of a rhombus are perpendicular bisectors of each other. Principle 6. Principle 7. The diagonals of a rhombus form 4 congruent triangles. Principle 8. A square has all the properties of both the rhombus and the rectangle. Sir, is there any principle that proving that a parallelogram is a rectangle? Yes, there is. Principle 9. If a parallelogram has 1 right angle, then it is a rectangle. Principle 10. If a parallelogram has congruent diagonals, then it is a rectangle. Proving that a parallelogram is a rhombus. Principle 11. If a parallelogram has congruent adjacent sides, then it is a rhombus.
Proving that a parallelogram is a square. Principle 12. If a parallelogram has a right angle and 2 congruent adjacent sides, then it is a square. Three or more parallels, medians and midpoints. Principle 1. If 3 or more parallels cut off congruent segments on one transversal, then they cut off congruent segments on any other transversal. Principle 2. If a line is drawn from the midpoint of one side of a triangle and parallel to a second side, then it passes through the midpoint of the third side. Principle 3. If a line joins the midpoints of 2 sides of a triangle, then it is parallel to the third side and its length is 1/2 the length of the third side. Principle 4. The median of a trapezoid is parallel to its bases, and its length is equal to 1/2 of the sum of their lengths. Principle 5. The length of the median to the hypotenuse of a right triangles equals 1/2 the length of the hypotenuse. Principle 6. The medians of a triangle meet in a point which is 2/3 of the distance from any vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side.
Created using Powtoon.